Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily, piecing together clues in the disappearance of Gabby Petito.
I ran to the computer, looked through the footage, and lo and behold, Gabby's van was right there.
Hear from the YouTubers who helped find Petito's missing van as a search for missing fiance Brian Laundrie continues. Plus, the defense calls its first witness in the federal trial of R. Kelly. But is a former police officer giving shaky testimony with inconsistent answers? Then, the murder of Suzanne Morphew. We scour hundreds of pages of court documents with explosive details. Why the investigators are pointing the finger at her husband for her disappearance. And later,
Scott Peterson did not get a fair trial.
Nearly 20 years after his wife's murder, convicted killer Scott Peterson may soon see a new trial. Why a juror may plead the fifth regarding her alleged misconduct in the case. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. We begin with a story captivating the nation. The FBI now confirms remains found in Wyoming are those of Gabby Petito. Meanwhile, fiance Brian Laundrie remains missing. On Tuesday, the search for Laundrie picked back up, with the governor of Florida ordering all state agencies to assist in the search. Laundrie was last seen last Tuesday when he told family he was backpacking in a Florida reserve. On Friday, Laundrie's parents told police they hadn't seen him in days. Florida officials then spent the weekend searching for him. The search was called off, but began again on Tuesday. On September 1st, Laundrie returned to his Florida home driving Petito's van without her. She was reported missing on September 11th. Petito was last seen in late August near Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. The Teton County coroner now confirms that remains found over the weekend are Gabby Petito. Her death is ruled a homicide, but a cause of death has not yet been released. Ahead of an autopsy, Law and Crime Daily sat down with Joseph Scott Morgan, a forensic death investigator. He says decomposition process already began by the time Petito's body was found.
It will be what we would classify as moderate to significant at this point. I can give you an idea that her body, unprotected, even if she had clothing on her, you would begin to see some signs of skeletonization that had begun to take place. The body would not be totally skeletonized. You'd still have some soft tissue. They're going to be looking at her head significantly to see if there's any kind of fracturing along skull. That's something that decomposition is not going to compromise.
We're also hearing new audio from a 911 call made by someone nearby in Arches National Park. Fellow guests of the park reported a domestic incident between Petito and Laundrie. Weeks before she went missing, police responded to the incident involving the pair. Body camera video was later released. Law and Crime obtained the audio from that emergency call.
What were they doing?
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
We're also hearing directly from the YouTubers whose camera recorded what was likely Gabby Petito's van in Wyoming late last month. That led to the discovery of the body that matched Petito's description. Law and Crime's Andrea Levy has more.
Jen and Kyle Bethune travel the country and document all of it on their Red, White, and Bethune YouTube channel. Little did they know they would record a piece of video that changed the search for Gabby Petito.
The video of the white van pulled off of the side of the road at the Sprague Creek campsite in Wyoming has gone viral. Jen Bethune said she discovered the van after receiving an Instagram notification from someone asking that she check her footage. She immediately called the FBI.
So we found it about 12:05 a.m. Sunday morning, and we called the authorities at 12:08 once I located their information. When I called them, I had goosebumps, like I had chills, and I was just like, I found her van, like patched me through to somebody.
Hours later, authorities searched the area and later announced they'd made a grim discovery. A body matching Gabby Petito's description had been found.
We don't want to take any credit for anything. We just did what anybody would do if we felt it was the right thing.
It's the pivot point in this case.
Forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan discusses the significance of the Bethune's video.
This area is so vast. What are the odds that the police and anybody else that was involved in the search were actually going to find a body This actually turned the entire case around.
If you look at the Bethune's video, you can see a hat on the dash. You see the same hat in the body camera video from the traffic stop in Moab, Utah on August 12th, where police separated Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. The Bethunes say Petito's mother thanked them for handing over the video.
We just really feel for the family, and at this point, we're just trying to support the family as much as we possibly can.
Jen Bethune actually calls this all an amazing mistake because Kyle had accidentally left the GoPro on when it recorded those images of the white van. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Anjanette Levy.
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin. Bernardo, as a former homicide prosecutor, what are you looking for in this upcoming autopsy to give some insight as to what happened to Petito?
So the most important elements that we're looking for in an autopsy is absolutely what is the cause of death and what is the manner of death. Because if the manner of death is not determined to be a homicide, then there is no criminal case having to deal with a murder or any homicide charges. In terms of what caused the death, are there any puncture wounds? Are there any bullet holes? Are there any skull fractures or bone fractures? We're looking at all of this because an autopsy is an internal as well as an external examination, as well as a toxicology is also done to see if there's any kind of narcotics or foul play within her system.
Absolutely. Terry, the search is on for Laundrie, but the longer it takes for him to be caught or turn himself in, doesn't that kind of hurt him at this point?
Absolutely, Brian. Taking the fifth is one thing, but when you flee the scene, it means that there is some consciousness of guilt. And what makes this even worse is the fact that the Laundrie family is saying they have no idea where he is. And now, according to their attorneys, they are not having any further comment. So this is going to just make it far more complicated for the authorities to find him. He's been missing since 9/14, meaning, a few days now, almost a week. And the longer it takes to find him, the more difficult, the more expensive it is. It's going to be harder for him when they finally do capture him.
Yeah, of course, when they find him, there's going to be the argument as to whether or not he's a flight risk. And at this point, the judge may remand him or even set extremely high bail. So we'll see how that plays out if and when they do find him. Thank you both. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, more on the Murdaugh family murder mystery. A detailed look of all the twists and turns. But first, the prosecution has officially rested in R. Kelly's sex crimes trial, how the defense begins its case in the trial against the R&B singer. Welcome back. The federal case of R. Kelly heats up as the defense takes center stage. On Monday, Kelly's team called its first witness who testified with some mixed messages. Defense lawyers called former Chicago police officer Larry Hood to the stand, Kelly's longtime friend and former security guard. To start, Hood said he never saw Kelly commit any abuse or interact with underage girls. Later testimony contradicted this, though, when Hood confirmed Kelly was with Aaliyah when she was 12 or 13. Earlier in the trial, prosecutors called upon an R. Kelly accuser who stated Hood was present at R. Kelly's Chicago apartment when he had sexual relations with underage girls. On Monday, Hood denied ever seeing anyone in Kelly's Chicago apartment besides the singer himself. Kelly faces multiple charges at the federal level, including sex trafficking and racketeering. He pled not guilty to all charges. Defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin to break down R. Kelly's defense. Terry, is this a logical or even persuasive defense, putting on people who didn't see abuse, but so many have already said it's happened to them? Couldn't Hood have just not been there for the abuse?
Listen, Hood probably was there for the abuse. This is really going to come down to a question of credibility. First, he said he never saw any young girls at the apartment. Then, of course, he changed that very quickly when they talked about Aaliyah being there. And we know that Angela was also previously on the stand, one of his other victims, and she said that he was there. So the question of credibility comes to the fact that he's a close friend of R. Kelly. He's a former police officer, and he left under disgraced circumstances for forgery. So I think the jury is going to not believe him and believe what the accusers have been saying.
I would agree with you there. Bernardo, day two of the defense's case saw an assistant studio engineer and accountant testify. What are we getting from these witnesses, and did the judge say when the jury may get the case?
So, Brian, with day 2 of testimony, we're seeing that common pattern. And that common pattern amongst the defense witnesses is that, look, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. R. Kelly did nothing wrong. Here today, we had Mr. Meeks, who came in and testified that he had known R. Kelly for 13 years. He started out as an intern and then worked in other of his business. And in that, he never saw R. Kelly mistreat any type of woman, and there were no locks on the door. In addition, he also called his accountant, who said that he had worked with him for a couple of years, took him out of $12 million in debt to $3 million in debt, and that he also saw no wrongdoing on R. Kelly's part. This is all a fabrication.
All right, we'll see how the jury interprets it. I know the locked door aspect was a big thing for the defense. I'm not sure if that's going to carry the day, but of course, when the jury gets the case and we hear closing arguments, that will paint a better picture as to where the defense is going with their case. Thank you both. Switching gears now, a double murder, botched assisted suicide plan, insurance fraud, and theft. The Murdaugh murder mystery continues to send shockwaves across the country. Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, breaks down the tangled web of Alec Murdaugh's past few months and brings us the latest developments in the story.
Thanks, Brian. Coming up this week on Brian Ross Investigates, we'll get the latest from South Carolina in that twisted, tragic saga of the Murdaugh family. An insider's look on what to expect next in the investigation.
Alec Murdaugh last week was charged with basically trying to orchestrate his own murder to cash in on a $10 million life insurance policy, purportedly to help his son, his remaining son. Things didn't go well. He ended up admitting to investigators, we were told, that this was the case. The man they arrested along with him was a 61-year-old guy who was a former logger who Murdaugh's attorneys have said it was his primary drug dealer.
That's coming up this week on Brian Ross Investigates on the Law&Crime Trial Network. Brian?
Thanks, Brian Ross. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, can a convicted killer, Scott Peterson, get a new trial? How alleged juror misconduct can possibly free this charged murderer. Plus, new court documents released for another man accused of killing his wife. What this lengthy affidavit reveals about Barry Morphew's marriage. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. Newly released court documents bring shocking new details to light against accused wife killer Barry Morphew. A 131-page affidavit paints a colorful picture of the life Barry and Suzanne Morphew shared. More than a dozen times, Morphew denied knowledge of his wife's affair, even calling his marriage, quote, perfect. But text messages between the couple shows a different story. As Suzanne texted, quote, I'm done and let's handle this civilly. The affidavit also points to the recording of a March 2020 fight between the pair. After Suzanne confided in her friend that Barry, quote, won't speak of divorce, the friend bought Suzanne a spy pen to record their conversations. Suzanne Morphew went missing on Mother's Day 2020. In a video, Barry Morphew claimed she was kidnapped and begged for her return. Authorities say it was an act and that he actually killed her. Last week, a judge ruled that Morphew's trial will begin on May 3rd of next year. He faces several charges, including first-degree murder and tampering with a deceased human body. Back for their take on Morphew affidavit is criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, Law&Crime's Adams Glassfeld wrote an article on the website that I recommend to everyone actually check out, listing 5 of the most eye-popping facts in this 131-page affidavit. Which one shocked you the most?
Well, they all shocked me, Brian, actually, but the internet searches, I think, were the ones that were a bit disturbing. He does admit that he looked at porn, but he's saying he never went on any dating sites, and some of the sites they found were about younger girls, finding a cute girl near Salida. And he said that he never did that, and he denied that he ever had any problems with his marriage. And frankly, it would have been better for him, I think, to admit to some of the problems, particularly since they've come up on his phone, and to just say he, yes, looked at some porn and maybe they were pop-ups. And he did mention that, but I think he should have just confronted them and told them the truth about everything on his phone.
Yeah, that's not too incriminating in terms of what he's being charged with, considering all the other facts. Bernardo, what do these text messages give the prosecution if his case goes to trial?
Well, what the text messages gives the prosecution is motive, pure motive. Prosecutor doesn't have to prove motive. However, motive does help a jury try to decide, why is it that this person killed this other person? And here you have motive, as well as you're discrediting him with him saying that he did not know that she was cheating on him.
Absolutely makes sense, and they'll definitely intertwine that in terms of the storytelling. If this case does go to trial, that, along with some of the little lies that he's making, I think will make for a strong prosecution case. Thank you both. And in Florida, a murder suspect has officially pled not guilty to all charges. Brian Potta was found murdered outside of his apartment in Kendall, Florida, back in November 2006. Former teammate Rashawn Jones has long been suspected, but was never arrested due to a lack of evidence. 15 years later, cell phone data placed Jones in the area the day and time of the murder. Potta and Jones were involved in confrontations before the shot was fired. On Friday, prosecutors formally filed second-degree murder charges against Jones, with a possibility of upgrading to first degree once the prosecutors present the case to a grand jury. When we come back, the next steps for Scott Peterson. The shocking new filings by his defense, why the convicted wife killer's attorneys are asking for an immunity for the one of the jurors who decided his fate. Next. Welcome back. An update now on the story Law&Crime Daily has been following for months. The trial of a Florida man accused of killing his wife, children, and dog has been pushed back. The trial of Anthony Todd was originally set to begin on Monday, but prosecutors requested more time to sift through large amounts of evidence. Prosecutors say Todd murdered his wife, 3 kids, and the family dog in January 2020. The family was renting a home in Celebration, Florida, originally developed by the Walt Disney Company and nearby the Orlando theme parks. In December 2019, the rental home's landlord attempted to evict the family after nearly $5,000 in rent money went unpaid. While Todd originally confessed to the murders, he later suggested his wife was responsible. Todd has entered a plea of not guilty. He is due back in court on October 18th. And jury selection is underway in Arizona for Mark Gooch, a U.S. airman who is accused of murdering Sasha Krause, a Mennonite schoolteacher. Krause disappeared from her community in January 2020. Her remains were found over a month later. An autopsy revealed she died of blunt force trauma and a gunshot wound to the head. Cell phone records and surveillance video put Gooch at the scene of the crime. Previous cell phone records obtained show that Gooch and his brothers show contempt towards those in the Mennonite faith. Mark Gooch is charged with first-degree murder and faces life in prison if found guilty. Turning now to the West Coast, where Scott Peterson is set to appear in court on Wednesday as his defense team inches closer to the promise of a new trial. Peterson was convicted of the 2002 death of his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor. In 2005, he was given the death penalty, but the sentence was later reduced to life without parole after the California Supreme Court cited significant errors in the jury selection. It's on those grounds of juror misconduct that Peterson's defense team say the court owes him a new trial. Juror number 7, later revealed to be Rochelle Neese, failed to disclose domestic abuse in her past. Peterson's defense argued Neese purposely tried to convict him because of her past issues. Court documents show Peterson's defense say Neese will plead the Fifth Amendment at Wednesday's evidentiary hearing unless granted immunity from the prosecution. After an appearance last month, one of Peterson's defense attorneys addressed the dispute with Juror 7.
I think it is somewhat difficult for us to understand why they don't want the truth to come out. We find it very difficult to understand why they wouldn't, as prosecutors and as their role to do justice, why they wouldn't want the information about Rochelle Neese to come out. We are perplexed by that and don't understand why it is that they continue to fight this when all we are trying to do is get at the truth.
Now, Bernarda, it's absolutely the prosecution's decision to give or not give Neese immunity. But why wouldn't they in a case this serious?
For several reasons. One, you do not want to reward bad behavior. You don't want a reward of giving immunity to a potential juror that lied under oath, because that's technically what you're doing when you're giving her immunity. But two, it's like, what can she reveal? She can reveal some information that can cause for a new trial to be ordered in this case. And the prosecution probably doesn't want to go through a trial all over again, which is sad because in the end, it's like, because you were a victim, does not mean that you're not qualified to be a juror. What would have happened is that there would have been further inquiry to see whether you can still remain fair and impartial.
Absolutely. Now, Terry, with Nice saying she'd plead the fifth, where do you think that would leave Peterson in terms of getting a new trial?
Well, it all depends on how the judge looks at that information. Frankly, the fact that she's pleading the fifth means that she's hiding something. And what is she hiding? The fact that she may have understood the questions that were being asked during voir dire and that she intentionally kept that information from the attorneys and from the court. So I think that the judge, when this evidentiary hearing does occur, is going to have to figure out what else we need in terms of information. Do we talk to other jurors? How are we going to find out what in fact this juror knew? Or the judge could very well hold it against her and come to the conclusion that she in fact was withholding information. And in fact, Peterson is deserving of a new trial. So much depends on what happens at that hearing.
Yeah, it's all about interpretation at that point. We'll see how that plays out as we continue to follow this case. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.